Child Protective Service workers, what is the worst case you have ever seen? Back in my mid-late 20s, I worked as a CPS agent. Specifically, I was the type to be sent to scope out living areas to see if it was suitable for the child. I think the worst living situation I've seen was this. So, I get called to this place. The report states that the house this family is living in isn't suitable for the child. It's pretty vague, so I go to the place. It's a really small house in middle of nowhere, Texas. This house looked like it had been abandoned for the last 100 years. It was essentially just a husk of a house. Rotting wood, barely stable. There isn't really a front door or front wall, so I let myself in. I'm really confused, because there's no way anyone could live here. There's no cars, no signs of life. I decide to walk around the outside of the house to make sure. In the distance, I can see something that doesn't look like it belongs in a Texas desert. I walk towards it, a good mile away. I get closer and notice that it's a tent. Actually, it's 3 tents all next to each other. Shitty tents at that. There's a bicycle leaned against one of them that's missing a wheel. There's trash everywhere. Mostly beer cans and cigarette butts. There's also plenty of food wrappers, hypodermic needles and what appears to be used toilet paper. The area smells atrocious. I approach the front of the biggest tent, and can hear people's voices coming from it. The voices have thick southern accents, and they sound weak for lack of a better word. I can only make out 2 distinct voices. They both sound like adults. I stand in front of the tent and just say hello, anybody home? I understandably scared them, because I hear what the F come from the inside of the tent. A very skinny looking man, likely in his late 20s, unzips the tent. He is completely naked, and is holding a small, beat-up kitchen knife. He looks high out of his mind. He asks very politely, who the F are you? From inside the tent, I can see that there is a woman crouched in the corner of the tent, also high out of her mind. I couldn't even tell if she was fully conscious, but the baby she was nursing certainly was. I said hello, my name is Agent, name, and I work with, City, Youth Protection Services. I've been called here about a poor living situation regarding children. Sir, do you have any children here with you? I'm extremely scared at this point. I'm in the middle of the desert, and the only item of self-defense I have is a taser. I try to keep my composure though. He lowers his knife and steps out of the tent, still completely naked. He said, F-man, thought you were here with the government here to take my kids and guns away. I'll give you a tour of the place if you want. I'm dumbfounded at this point, but I follow him as he walks over to unzip one of the other tents. Inside I see 2 children. One is unresponsive, laying face down in the corner of the tent, looks to be around 5 to 6 years old. The other one looks to be around 8 to 9, and is laying in the other corner playing with a Walkman without a tape or headphones in it. I asked him if it was okay to ask his kids a few questions. He said they don't talk much, but sure. I poke my head into the tent and ask the kid playing with the Walkman and ask, hey, what's your name? He doesn't answer. I ask his assumed father if it's alright if I tap him on the shoulder to get his attention. He said sure, so I did. The kid looked at me with a blank expression on his face. I can immediately tell that this kid has severe developmental problems. I ask, hey friend, what's your name? He doesn't respond. I then tap the other kid who's laying face down on a blanket. He turned over and his face was completely covered in bruises. Looked like he straight up went through a fight club. I asked him what his name was. He said Devin. I asked him where all of the bruises came from. He looked at his dad, then went back to going face down into the blanket and started sobbing. I couldn't get his attention anymore. I stood up from the tent and looked at the father. I asked him what was in the other tent. We started walking over to it. As we did, I noticed this horrible smell coming from it. He unzipped it and I saw a girl, who couldn't have been older than 4. There is a corner of the tent that is lower than the rest of it. It is full of urine. Like, to ground level, just full of urine. She's in the corner of the tent playing with some dolls. I stand up, tell the man that I'll be right back. Just have to grab something from my car. I return to my car and call the local police. I tell them who I am and what the situation is. They asked if I felt safe stalling until the police showed up. I said yes. I talked to the father about not much in particular. I asked him why he thought the government was coming for his kids and guns. He went on this long incoherent rant about how ever since he moved here, he feared that he was going to lose his guns. I asked him where he kept the guns. He said he kept them under the floorboards in the rotting house. Around this time, the police showed up. 3 patrol cars full of cops drove out to the tents. The man didn't even turn around or notice until one of the officers told us to put our hands up and drop to our knees. They get processed. The kids get put in foster care. As it turns out, the couple were biological siblings, and heavy meth/heroin/crack users.